So you want to make naan, but you struggled before, you've never made it before? Don't worry, these tips and principles are gonna help you nail every naan you make. Do you want to go restaurant style naan? Lovely, fluffy, high effort, but absolutely blowing everybody away? Or you want to go the lazy naan, where you just spend no time at all in the kitchen and you bam, whop, 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 up and ready for your curry? Or you want to stuff it with anything you like? Oh yeah. Keep watching. Let's do this. First, we make the easy and fast naan. It is not as great as the restaurant-style gourmet naan, but it is great when you need a fast naan because you forgot about it and the curry is about to be ready. So for this naan, we want to use basic ingredients so you can whip up a naan with as little effort and ingredients as possible. Here's the ingredient list. The formula is also very easy for this naan recipe, so you can adapt to how many naans you want to make. In a bowl, start by adding equal parts, so 160 grams of flour and 160 milliliters of warm or at least room temperature whole yogurt. You could also use any plant-based yogurt if you want, or even a mixture of milk and lemon juice. Then add a teaspoon or 6 grams of salt, a teaspoon or 6 grams of sugar, 4 grams of baking powder, and 3 grams of baking soda. This will help get the naan so fluffy. I'll explain later why this is. Finally, add 1 tablespoon or 15 milliliters of olive oil and mix everything together with a spatula. Then take a little less than half the amount of flour you used before and add that to the dough batter to form a smooth dough ball. So I used 160 grams of flour, half that is 80 grams, and a little less, so 10 grams less, so you get 70 grams of flour. You want the ball to be smooth. If you feel that the dough ball is too stiff, add more yogurt or water, and if it's too wet, add more flour. Then make sure to knead the dough for 2 to 3 minutes. Give it a few taps of love and let it rest under a kitchen towel while you heat your skillet to medium-high heat. Then divide your dough ball into 4 even balls. A naan is originally about 90 grams per naan. Roll out each ball into oval shapes to half a centimeter thick discs, cover them in oil, and then bake the naan on one side until small bubbles form. If bubbles don't form, turn up the heat. If the pan smokes completely, turn down the heat. Then flip, and when it's nice and golden brown, brush the naan with some ghee or unsalted butter. And that's the easy, lazy method naan ready. I would say go and devour that curry that you're actually craving for. Or if you want to see how the restaurant style naan is made, I do not blame you, because it is the best one in my opinion. That being said, this one was made with baking powder and baking soda, and that's slightly different than the restaurant style naan that has yeast in it. Now here's a quick breakdown of what the difference is between these three: baking soda, baking powder, and yeast. It is very important to know these differences to become a better home cook and know when to use what. Baking soda is a chemical called sodium bicarbonate that reacts to any acid. Baking powder is the same chemical but has the dried acid already mixed in, called cream of tartar. Yeast is completely different because it's basically just a living microorganism that doesn't react but eats sugar from the dough and releases gases called carbon dioxide. Yeah, this little guy is literally pooping inside of your dough and you're happy about it. To demonstrate, when I pour this water into all 3 cups, you see that baking powder reacts to the water, but the baking soda doesn't. That only happens when I squeeze in some lemon juice. The yeast is just nice and comfy clumping together. They all affect the flavor and texture of your product differently and also take longer or shorter to work with. But the only thing that you need to know right now is that baking powder and baking soda reacts to acid and is a chemical, and yeast is a living organism who does all its work on its own with the right conditions, but takes more time as well. But it's worth it. Let's be honest here. Now let's go into the restaurant style naan recipe and go from that lazy naan chef to that ultimate boss restaurant style chef you actually always wanted to be, right? There we go. Then for our restaurant style naan, where we use our yeasty friend. In a bowl, add 500 grams of flour and keep around 100 grams of extra flour apart for kneading later. For the ultimate naan, we of course use Indian Maida flour. But if you can't find this, feel free to use all-purpose flour instead. Add 7 grams of baking powder for extra fluffiness. Yes, you are allowed to mix this with the yeast, no worries. Add 8 grams of fine sea salt and 25 milliliters of olive oil. Mix together and set aside. Then in a cup, add 200 milliliters of whole milk at room temperature and add 7 grams of instant yeast. Then also add 8 grams of granulated sugar and 1 large egg. Whisk together and set aside. Then to the dry ingredients, add 160 milliliters of whole yogurt, also at room temperature. Mix this in and add your milk mixture to the dough. Mix everything together and dump it out on your work surface to start kneading. The dough is still slightly wet, so make sure you have a bench scraper. Trust me when I say it will save you 10 headaches and the cost of an expensive anger management class. Link in the description below. Add 50 grams of flour to the dough and keep adding flour until it becomes a manageable, smooth dough ball. Then of course make love to it through the art of kneading for 6 to 10 minutes. If you can shine a light through a thin piece of dough and it doesn't break, you know you have kneaded it enough and made your dough strong as it should be. Then form it into a strong ball, throw it onto your work surface and give it a slap of love like you slap that like and subscribe button for more of those videos, right? Then let the dough ball rest for 1 hour under a warm, damp kitchen towel on a warm spot so the yeast can do its business and double it in size. After the hour is over, dump your dough onto a work surface and divide it into 10 equal dough balls. Shape them and lay them into a sheet pan covered with a kitchen towel for another 1 hour. Now I don't have a tandoor at home like an Indian restaurant, but these methods still get you pretty close to a delicious restaurant style naan. But if you have one, I applaud you. Heat a cast iron skillet to medium-high heat and roll or stretch out your dough into oval-shaped naans. The optimal thickness is 5 millimeters or half a centimeter, but feel free to play around with the thickness. You got 10 tries. If you roll out the dough, it's more even, but you get more airy bubbles if you stretch the dough because the rolling pin degasses the naan more than you stretch it. Brush the flattened dough with ghee or oil and bake the naans on one side for about a minute or so until you see small bubbles form. Flip around and bake for another minute and immediately brush on some butter and no worries, I will cover the topics in a bit. I have also made a few naans from the oven. It gets closer to your tandoor naan from the restaurant, but it's definitely more work for the regular home cook. But to do this, preheat your oven to a flaming hot temperature. Mine went all the way up to 300 degrees Celsius or 572 degrees Fahrenheit. And I also put on my broiler. Then I added a pizza stone and a metal pan and let that preheat for 45 minutes. Then I added my naan and it puffed up like a Neapolitan pizza in minutes. Beautiful. But feel free to use any method you like. Now for the final naan variation, the stuffed naan. Real easy. Grab one of your dough balls, add a handful of mozzarella or Gouda cheese to a flattened dough ball, then pull and pinch the ball like this, almost like you're making a big dumpling. Try not to tear the dough, then with your rolling pin, gently roll your ball as flat as possible. Add some oil to the dough and cook the naan for around 2 minutes on each side or until it has golden brown spots on both sides. Brush on some ghee or butter, then add some chopped cilantro and garlic to it and look at this beauty. Before we taste it, know that you can also roll in your garlic and cilantro into your dough beforehand. Or do whatever you like to do with your naan. Get creative, make a few different variations, have fun, and most of all, enjoy. Oh my god. This on its own is amazing. But with a curry, ready for heaven. And there you have it, the restaurant style naan that we were looking for. We've stuffed it, we've topped it, we've baked it in the oven on a very high heat. And of course, don't forget the lazy method. You can always refer back to that in times of need. But I would suggest to now figure out what you're gonna eat this with. And that would be a very good start right here. This tikka masala or any other curry on my channel is a great fit for this lovely naan recipe. So I'll see you there. Bye-bye.